Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. I've been gone in Atlantic City for the weekend, and I drank alcohol. Yes, I did, several days in a row, and I feel like crap now. I know better. Why do I do it? Because once you have that first drink, it all becomes blurry and fun. Anyway, today is Tuesday. We have the Blueprint Power Hour that's going to start in just a moment with my co-host, Coach Rob Regish. But before that, I have to, of course, acknowledge our title sponsor, All-American Pharmaceuticals and EFX Sports. And right now, you can get 6 of their top-selling products absolutely free by going to superhumanradio.net, clicking one of the EFX Sports banner ads, enter your name and address, pay $5 and change for shipping, and you will see what all the rage and rave is about EFX products, because you'll get all the top-selling products to try, because Dr. Jeff believes that no one should buy anything until they've tried it, and he puts his money where his mouth is, so check that out.
Calling all Blueprint Army. Fall in line. It's time for the Blueprint Power Hour with Coach Rob Regish on the Superhuman Radio Network.
How you doing, Rob?
Fantastic, man. Coming off a really strong workout yesterday, and now it's time for a week off.
I actually trained 2 days in Atlantic City, even though I was out drinking the nights before. I did not train yesterday because we traveled yesterday, and I didn't train today because I didn't get home until midnight last night.
Right.
So I took off. But I've been crushing it in the gym. I really have. In fact, I purposefully pushed myself into an overtraining place before leaving because I thought I wouldn't train at all. But they had a nice gym at the Golden Nugget, so I did get in a couple workouts. Wow.
That's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, and, I drank the nights before, so I didn't feel the best, so I didn't push as hard. I didn't push myself to failure, but I did use similar weights as I was using at home, but instead of doing 20 reps of something, I did 15, or instead of doing 15, I did 12. Just to get the pump going. But no, it was very satisfying. And then, of course, sat in the sauna a couple days in a row. And one of my favorite things to do is the sauna. So
yeah, very cool.
Elisa goes, "Why do you always do this before we go out of town?" Because I told her, before we left, I said, "Man, all my muscles are just so sore right now. Right. I'm pushing myself to overtraining." And she goes, "Well, why do you do this before we go out of town?" I said, "Because I expect not to train and just to eat a lot. And so that kind of will be a boomerang effect of overtraining and then not training at all and eating a lot. My body will put on some new muscle." And sure enough, I looked in the mirror this morning, and there's no doubt that I grew. There's no doubt in my mind about it.
That's awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, I'm 60.
Yeah, 60 years old, man. Wow.
I'm not supposed to be able to add muscle.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially on a couple nights of drink. And, so when I left for Atlantic City, I said, I'm not going to drink at all. And then the first night we got there, Lisa and I had our own time in the evening. And so we went out to a nice Italian restaurant. And, of course, I'm not going to let her drink by herself. And so I ended up having a couple gin and tonics. I haven't had a gin and tonic in forever.
Yeah.
And, then a glass of wine. And then the next day I did pretty much the same thing with my cousins at my cousin Rosemary's 75th birthday party.
Oh, wow.
And then the next day I was like, I'm not going to drink today. Oh, maybe I'll just have a glass of wine with lunch. So it's like it just kind of I don't know what it is about me and alcohol being symbolic of having fun. But it is what it is, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Listen, at 60, for that amount of muscle, man, I hope I'm carrying that amount of muscle at 60.
Well, and you and I are going to talk about something at the end of today's show that us older guys need to really pay attention to. We're going to be talking about training your neck. and some caveats, some things that you need to pay attention to, in my humble opinion. So we'll get into that. So you've got something exciting going on for over at the Blueprint Bulletin right now.
Yeah,
why don't you talk about that?
We're in the last 5 days of this year's Blueprint Bulletin Pro special. And look, it's 74 huge issues at 1/3 of at 1/3 off the usual asking price, covering 300 topics. And I'll just give you a few examples. The single most overlooked herb in sports nutrition. It is not heavily advertised. I don't see anybody talking about it. How a single word on a label can help you spot high-quality protein, and how another word tells you it's absolute junk. 400 milligrams a week of test cypionate. I show you how it's possible, and USA Legal Eagle. And also, you can discover a simple, inexpensive supermarket item that has been shown to increase muscular performance and endurance a whopping 50%. Now, if that wasn't enough, you're also going to get my hormone optimization course updated for 2018 for free. Normally, sells for $50, contains priceless info. Current subscribers, of course, will get it for free. So go to CoachRobRegish.com to sign up now for just 65 cents a day. You will not believe what you've been missing.
Yeah, it's really an amazing value. It's like a vault of information.
And they keep coming every month.
Well, and people are so willing to spend $65 a month on bunk supplements that do nothing. Information does it forever. Once you learn something that works, it does it forever.
Yeah, and if you like supplements, we talk plenty about them in there. And also, to your point, which ones are bunk and which ones are the real deal.
Right.
So you get your supplements with this.
So our first question comes from Nick Zamansky. Zamsky. I'm sorry, I put an N in there. He said, I'm trying to wrap my head around your philosophy on training. From listening to you and reading your works, it sounds all over the place. Why so many different strategies over the years?
It's a fair question. So I'll take it from the beginning. So when I sat down to write the blueprint, it was with the express purpose of putting on a lot of muscle fast. And that protocol had to work even in advanced men. People have been doing this for years and likely plateaued. So what you saw wasn't just one training method. The blueprint brought together half a dozen, to be used over the first 8 to 12 weeks, let's call it. Each one of those had a very high success rate in the general population. But that is simply not enough if you really need it to work for everyone. So, for example, you're going to find some people that respond really well to heavy-duty, high-intensity type training, and they'll do real well with it for up to 12 weeks. But not everyone will, given people are coming from a different place. But, and here's the big thing, when you can orchestrate where everyone is coming from, you can craft something that will work almost 100% of the time for everyone. So prior to HIIT, right, we use a total tonnage training with lots of volume and frequency. Virtually everyone, and I'm sure you've noticed this, everyone who switches to HIIT after a high volume phase gains big. Now imagine doing that 6 or 7 times over the course of 2 to 3 months, and you begin to understand why it's such a no-brainer and has such an absurdly high success rate. I think what's fair to say is that most people stick with something most of the time, way too long. Or, at the other end of the spectrum, they program hop, which sabotages their gains. There are some hard and fast rules, though, that you can apply, and here they are. Number 1, if you just train to get stronger, a lot of other things take care of themselves. Number 2, of all the variables your body adapts to the quickest, it's reps. Number 3, if you're looking for what's wrong in your training, the answer can always be found in one of the 3 following areas: intensity, volume, or frequency. 4, of those 3, intensity is by far the most important. Volume is always a negative insofar as recovery is concerned. But, on the flip side, a certain amount of volume is needed for hypertrophy. And then finally, training frequency is the toughest variable to, nail down, because your ability to train productively as frequently as possible depends. Depends on your diet, depends how you've been sleeping, depends, how much you did last time and what you plan to do next time. Frequency is also always a moving target, and it's really the only thing a well-thought-out program can't tell you. So that's why I've prescribed so many training methods over the years, Nick. I wish it was simpler, but as I just tried to illustrate, it's not an exact science. There's always going to be an art to it. The best advice I ever heard from someone was, the best program for you is the one you're not currently using. There's a big grain of truth to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you've pointed out over the years, things work for a period of time and then they stop working.
Right.
And so instead of waiting for them to stop working, changing with anticipation of the body become accustomed to the rep scheme or the exercise scheme is really what you've capitalized on. I mean, I said a long time ago that you didn't create any of these programs, these routines that you use, but you have, like Google, gone out and searched for the ones that work the best and then methodically paired them. So when you finish with this one, you start this one. So you really never plateau. In fact, you keep getting stronger.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that what you just described, almost nobody does. Some people are on the 5x5 routine, some people heavy duty. Very few have a half a dozen locked and loaded that work with each other, and that's why they don't stop gaining.
Yeah.
So
Jimmy Longy says, let's say someone is interested in balance of health, performance enhancement, and longevity. What supplements would you take without breaking the bank?
It's a great question, right? Because it gets back to the economic realities of this. I have a few thoughts on this and, what the best bang for your buck is going to be. So here goes. Number one, obviously, creatine monohydrate or crealkaline. There can be no doubt creatine is the best performance enhancer around and the most well-researched. It's also one of the healthiest. Some of the latest research I saw was how well it protected the brain against traumatic injuries. Either 3 to 5 grams of creatine mono or 1.5 grams of crealkaline a day will do you well. N-acetylcysteine is another one, 2 grams a day or more. NAC is the precursor to glutathione, right, which is your body's most prolific endogenous antioxidant. It's so good that the medical community uses it as a biomarker of aging. It's also great for the liver. Tremendous product. Inexpensive, too. 3, TMG, trimethylglycine, a.k.a. betaine, has shown some nice performance-enhancing benefits, and they know now that those are tied to the increased IGF-1 and lower cortisol levels that it causes. Less well-known is its ability to lower levels of homocysteine, which is usually elevated in people consuming a lot of protein, excess. The more I learn about methylation, and it started on this show, the more I'm convinced it underlies not only performance, but also health. I would try 2 to 5 grams a day and see if it doesn't improve your mood. And TMG is one of the things that can improve your mood in minutes of taking it. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is obviously a huge one. It's the only vitamin doctors test for, which should tell you something. Most North Americans are going to need to supplement in order to get levels above 50. Now, while I wait patiently for the new Primal D, I've been trying to get a lot of sunshine and 10,000 IU a day from an oral supplement. Doing so got my levels to 60 on my last round of blood work. But bear in mind, That was during the summer up here. You know, I live in Massachusetts, so I've got 6 months at least where I don't get much sun. So take that for what it's worth. Curcumin, it has so many benefits, it boggles the mind. That goes for performance-enhancing, anti-carcinogenic, and otherwise. Get 2 grams a day. If it's not already complexed with bioperin or black pepper extract, take it with some fat. Curcumin, unfortunately, it has very low bioavailability, so it needs the help from either fat or piperine. So there you have it. 5 supplements that'll strike a nice balance between performance enhancement, health, and longevity. And those 5 will not break the bank. Going forward, based upon what I've seen with myself, I would recommend some sort of genetic testing to determine optimal micronutrient intake for whatever conditions you may or may not have. You know, next month's Blueprint Bulletin is going to show you where I got that done, what it showed in its entirety. I've talked a little bit about it here, but not all of it, and how it now plays a part in the supplements that I take. So,
interestingly, you know, I had mine done, and because of the neurological issue that took my sister's life, that clearly is affecting my life right now, I was worried about methylation myself. I was worried about, you know, the effects of things like methylfolate, but I'm not. I don't have that mutation. So luckily, the B vitamins aren't. They are working for me. Let's put it that way.
See, and that's the kind of information that's power.
Yeah, because you don't have to worry about it. You could go, okay, that's not my thing. It's someplace else.
Right, exactly. You don't have to guess. So.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we've got lots more to talk about. You're listening to the Blueprint Power Hour. You can go to CoachRobRegish.com to learn more if this is your first time hearing it. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So the next question comes from Jerry Allen. He says, like a lot of other guys, I take a pre-workout powder before I train. Sometimes it really jacks me up, and other times I get almost nothing out of it. I have a feeling this goes back to my nutrition or maybe my sleep. Any ideas what it might be?
Well, certainly stimulants hit harder when you're well rested, and especially on an empty stomach. That's one of the benefits of intermittent fasting, right? I mean, things like ephedrine, caffeine, and individual amino acids that, make you alert or alternatively drowsy, they work much better. But there's another possibility that almost nobody considers. The vast majority of these powdered pre-workouts are not very consistent scoop to scoop. And the ingredient, of course, in question here that I'm talking about is usually caffeine. So to back that statement up with some science, I'm going to reference a study that was just published this month on the caffeine content of pre-workouts. So I'll quote directly from the abstract. 15 pre-workout supplements were tested for their caffeine content, both within and between batches of the same product. The caffeine content ranged from 91 to 387 milligrams per serving. Well, interestingly enough, only 6 of the 15 had nutrition information panels that included details on the caffeine content. I thought for sure they had to list it. The percentage of caffeine present ranged from 59 to 176% of label claims, and all but one was consistent and considered within an acceptable range, 50 milligrams or so scoop to scoop. Consumers then are likely to be exposed to large and variable caffeine doses when ingesting powdered pre-workout products. So prior to seeing this, I often wondered how the caffeine, or for that matter, the other ingredients in powdered products could always be consistent scoop to scoop. Now I know that concern was valid. What does that mean to you? So I've got a couple of thoughts. I wouldn't touch a powdered pre-workout. I don't like them. They're high-margin products, usually stuffed with low-quality ingredients. And when it comes to caffeine, don't overdo it. Let's say 200 milligrams. And ideally, if you're using it to potentiate something else, not more than 80 to 100. You can, like I said before, steer clear of the powdered pre-workouts. Not only are they laced with too much caffeine, and I'll define that as, let's say, more than 300 milligrams. You can't count on whatever the label's telling you. Understand also that too much caffeine raises cortisol, which is going to be raised anyway, right, by heavy training. Cortisol, for those that don't know, lays down fat and chews up muscle. Not good. Next, if you must use it, try 80 to 100 milligrams caffeine with 3 grams of tyrosine or a similar amount of DL-phenylalanine and, let's say, a nootropic focus agent, something like Noopept or even a Drafinil if you've been really dragging, which is the precursor to modafinil. Modafinil is not legal in the United States without a prescription. Drafinil is. And then finally, understand too much caffeine almost totally negates creatine's benefits. Now, a lot of these pre-workouts contain creatine, which tells you what? Tells you the formulator didn't do his homework. Creatine is best taken post-workout without caffeine, or after your taken pre-workout without caffeine, right? As you see in like Progenitrex, or after your workout with a dash of sodium and carbs. Now, All-American EFX is Carbolin. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the Cadillac of carb powders for that and other applications, in my opinion. So, there you have it, Jerry. To me, that was some really eye-opening info on just what these products contain or don't, as the case may be. My pre-workout, which I know I've been talking about forever, is another reason why mine will be in capsules, so that we're able to deliver a consistent level of caffeine, but not too much, where it's going to work against you instead of for you.
The next question comes from Matt Rinaldi. He says, where do you stand these days on growth hormone secretagogues and releasers?
Growth hormone has always been easier to boost in this game than testosterone. So it's important to understand how. GH usually peaks several times a day, but it's the first 90 minutes of sleep where it's usually the highest. The biggest mistake you can make in terms of getting a GH release would be going to bed on a belly full of carbs, right? So try to do so either on a relatively empty stomach or protein and fat. That same empty stomach is important for strategy number 2, which is getting aminos across the blood-brain barrier that boost growth hormone. And when it comes to that, when it comes to the aminos and growth hormone, GABA, I think by far, gamma-aminobutyric acid, is what you want to be using. The ideal is 3 to 5 grams on an empty stomach. And in that environment, it's been shown to boost GH up to 550% and over 400% pre-workout, which is another story. But, the real benefit when you take it at night is it puts you in a deep sleep. Makes falling asleep easier, staying asleep. If you dream, you will see stuff that you just can't believe, and you'll remember your dreams. Understand, though, GABA has some side effects, none of which are bad per se. But if you're not expecting them, it panics a lot of people. First, it can make you drowsy, but many also get something akin to a niacin flush, right? You're going to feel within just minutes of taking it, you're going to feel tingling on the top of your head and your extremities. It's important to remember that only lasts a few minutes, and then it passes. So know it can happen. It's actually a very good sign because although I don't have any science to back this up, when I've taken it not on an empty stomach before, I don't get those tingles. I really doubt it's getting past the blood-brain barrier with all the food I took with it. Training in a certain fashion can also boost GH, but again, this is transiently, what I call lactic acid tolerance training. I also saw a recent study which showed you could boost growth hormone 1,700% simply by performing slow negatives. So think about that the next time you train. You know, since most people count too fast when they're doing those reps, the research showed 3 seconds. Since a lot of people count fast, especially when they're under load, I'd suggest you shoot for a 5 count. Most people will wind up at 3 that way. Other amino acids that boost growth hormone on an empty stomach, arginine, although it takes over 10 grams, and you better have the Charmin handy. It's bitter as hell, too. Ornithine, L-ornithine, that's tough to find in bulk. It's out there, but it's tough. But my favorite after GABA is glycine. And I really like glycine. It also ramps up your body's natural creatine production. And unlike most other aminos, it's sweet. I think you use it in Thrive, right?
Yeah, I use it in Thrive, but I use it in coffee. I use it to sweeten foods.
Oh, my God, it's a great product. Up to 10 grams for GH release works well, sometimes even more. But, and please take my word on this, build up to that level slowly. Because if you don't, you're going to be in the bathroom, and that's not pleasant. It's important to point out that any good GH releaser should usually number one, either make you drowsy, make you hungry, and then finally, if you want to objectively measure whether it's really working, it should be boosting your IGF-1 levels, right, which is the active metabolite of GH. In next month's Blueprint Bulletin, I will be revealing my exact IGF-1 levels after 2 months of MK677 at 25 milligrams a day, taken in a 5-day on, 2-day off protocol. And let me just say this, it is some real eye-opening stuff. So subscribers, get ready for it. It's information that's really, really important.
Very interesting. I'll be interested to hear about that as well.
Oh, yeah. It's sometimes it's what you expect, and sometimes it isn't. So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
Mike Sanders says, I'd like to know what supplements you think have stood the test of time. I need to really pare down what I'm taking and could use some help narrowing the focus.
I'll try to take it chronologically, going back to the first days of sports nutrition. Personally, my reference point at the beginning was in the 1980s, but as we'll soon see here, there were a few gems even before that. First up would have to be liver tabs, right, a.k.a. desiccated liver. These were studied not by supplement companies or even the government, but the U.S. Army. And they were found to have some rather profound benefits, not the least of which is mitigating cortisol. They are also a rich source of B vitamins, heme iron, and amino acids. They're still out there today. I think Beverly Nutrition makes a good one, and they're totally worth the money. If you've never used them, try them. There's a reason Vince Gironda was so big on them, especially dieting. That same era also saw lecithin granules popularized by none other than Arnold, right? He spoke highly of them in his education of a bodybuilder. Today, we know they activate mTOR, which is a key factor in protein synthesis and muscle growth. 2 tablespoons a day is about right for most. And along the same lines as the MK, I have some very interesting information in this month's bulletin about timing of lecithin granules and mTOR around training. And it's really important if you're going to be taking the granules. In the mid to late 80s, Bulgarian tribulus hit the scene, and it's been around ever since. 1,500 milligrams a day will boost libido, improve erections, And we know now raise IGF-1 levels about 20%. If you're looking for a tribulus to boost testosterone, you might want to look into Tribulus alatus, which is something that you don't hear a lot about. You always hear Tribulus terrestris. But Tribulus alatus, it's tough to find that strain, but the research does show an increase in tests to a much more significant degree than Tribulus terrestris. Creatine, of course, the most well-known and probably your best bet for muscle gain. I found creatine mono, crealkaline, and creatine hydrochloride, all very effective. Whey protein is obviously another, albeit blends containing micellar casein and whey are far more effective. And that's not marketing, that's science. We've done those studies over and over and over and repeatedly shown that a mix is best, fast and a slow protein. So in that respect, Thrive wins that hands down. I happen to think ZMA, zinc magnesium aspartate, is underrated, considering deficiencies among athletes are widespread, and with some estimates as high as 80% being deficient in magnesium. Throw in the fact that it improves your sleep, and it stacks really well with GABA or glycine. It's a no-brainer, and it's cheap. Essential amino acids should be number one on most people's list. The research just keeps pouring in as to their benefits. And, for years, I espoused flooding the body with essential aminos during training, even before you take something like creatine. And now the research is really bearing that out. Far better than just branched-chain aminos. Although, it's important to remember, when you take the essential amino acids, you're getting the three branch chains, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, among those 9. Beta-alanine has a ways to go insofar as time in the market, but I'm pretty confident in stating it'll be around 10 years from now, no question. 3 to 6 grams a day with food is optimal. If you're taking creatine, it's my opinion is beta-alanine to take with it is an absolute must. The studies are very clear. People put on 3 times the amount of muscle, people that were taking both versus creatine alone. It's a hell of an advantage to give up. Trimethylglycine, taurine, L-taurine, and ecdysterone all get honorable mention. Actually, TMG is especially dynamite when paired with essential aminos, ecdy and taurine, which is why you see all 4 and more in something like Synthogen. So all of those that I just mentioned, they've been around, right, for the past 20 years at least, with some going back, 50 or even more. Although they won't give you steroid-like results, they do make a noticeable difference. When you're taking them, you perform at a much higher level than when you don't. Not as high as everybody wants, not as high as Big Brother steroids, but they work. And it's important to point out, people keep buying them for a reason. If a product isn't doing anything, if it's not working, if you're deriving no discernible benefit from it, you won't buy it. People continue to buy these products over and over. So I hope that helps.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we have more questions. And we're going to be talking about some fun stuff, too, towards the end of the show. If you like to train your neck, some things you ought to be careful of.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. So BJ Massoya, or Massoya, I don't know, I'm butchering your name, I know, Massoia. He says, I just discovered your show and really enjoy it. I'm 30 years old, been training for 5 years, and starting to see some changes. I have a condition called ankylosing spondylitis, which Rob knows a lot about, though, and have a lot of pain in my lower back. The doctors tell me there's nothing that can stop the disease from progressing. Is that true? And is there anything that can stop, that I can do to stop it? Yeah. Don't you have a client that has that?
I do. I train a woman with that condition. And this is the third person now that I've heard has this, and it's a really scary disease. The thing is, AS can strike people down at any age, but it's not uncommon for it to occur, let's say, in your 20s, 30s, or even later. I mean, it just comes out of nowhere. It's a condition whereby the SI joint and others, but always the SI joint, progressively the joints start to fuse together. And the doctors will tell you there's nothing you can do. You probably already know my position on that. There's always something you can do. And with AS, I think one of the most important things is it's very important to move. Something akin, and this is what my client's analogy. She said, when we work out, it's like shaking the ice cube tray. So every time you exercise, you loosen the bones and the joints that are under attack, that are supposed to be fusing. But there you are using them, and it seems to benefit people tremendously. Even if you're in a lot of lower back pain, there is plenty that you can do. So I want to give you the following 4 things that I found are really helpful, at least to her. Number 1 is wall walks. That form of bridging helps all back injuries, but it's particularly important for people with AS, right? Now, so to give you an idea of what's possible, when she started with me, she couldn't lift her head off the floor in a typical back bridge. Today, she can do wall walks with 50 pounds of chain around her neck. Number 2, hip belt squats. Not a surprise. People with lower back issues can still build up some really impressive numbers. And you can work your legs into the ground, right, without your lower back being compromised. She's actually squatted 255 for ladders using a 1-5 spread. So in other words, 45 rest, pause, reps pretty much. I have other perfectly healthy athletes that can't pull that off. Number 3 is reverse hypers, very important for those with AS. It's the one exercise that rotates the sacrum, and it pumps blood into the discs. And then 4, pullovers. Apparently with AS, there's a risk whereby the rib cage becomes, I'll use the word compromised. I forgot the word that she used, but people literally can suffocate to death because the lungs can't expand and apparently get enough air. And she reports that pullovers help tremendously. So those 4 things are certainly all things that you can and should be doing. At the end of the day, AS is a scary condition. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but my genetic testing showed I have the gene for it. Doesn't mean I'll get it, but I have the gene for it. She has a friend whose jaw has fused shut. I mentioned it can happen in any joint, but her jaw has fused shut, and she can only eat through a straw. That same friend, her ankles have fused, and now she can no longer walk. What's interesting is that she was diagnosed about the same time my client was, and she is far worse off today. My client is convinced it's because she never exercised early, especially after being diagnosed. So, I can't say I know that to be true, but I will tell you this. Every time this woman that I train, every time she hits a PR, she lights up like a Christmas tree. And although she's considered handicapped, she's capable of doing things a lot of healthy people can only dream about. So I don't know that you can stop AS from progressing like they're talking about, but I am convinced you can delay it and dramatically improve your quality of life along the way. And that's really important because, in her words, outside the gym, people treat her with kid gloves like she's going to break. Don't lift this, don't do that, oh my God, no, sit down, let me get this. And her doctors even teach her like this, or treat her like this, rather. So I took a video of those wall walks with 50 pounds of chain, and I said, here, show this to your doctor next time you go in there. And I'm told his reaction included raised eyebrows and his mouth literally dropping open. So I'm hopeful, he'll think twice next time before he tells someone there's nothing you can do, there's no hope. Never believe there's nothing you can do. Never, ever, ever. There's always something. I've given you some ideas here, so please take them and run with them. I'd love to hear from you again. You will never know what you're truly capable of until you try. And these people, just like us, the rest of us, normal people, make gains the same way. 5 pounds added to the bar, another rep, another set, doing the work and more work in the same amount of time or even less time. Their bodies are responding, which is a whole hell of a lot better scenario than what their doctors have left them with. Do you know anybody with it, Carl?
No, I don't. I've only ever heard about it through you. I've heard of the disease before, but I've never met anybody who had it.
My chiropractor also has it, but he was diagnosed when he was a teenager. Yeah.
I mean, I knew a girl when I was young that had spinal bifida. That was like a progressive curving of the spine. She ended up like all hunched over, I guess, later on in life. But not ankylosing spondylitis, no. Yeah,
I don't know, it's scary, to know that I got the gene for it is, I don't know what you can do, in the sense of being preventative.
Well, I'm going to tell you something that I've come to the conclusion of. Every single disease of modernity has a link back to autoimmunity. Every one of them. Every single one of them. I've been reading about, I've been pulling from threads and going off on tangents, neurological disorders. So they discovered that glaucoma is an autoimmune disorder.
Wow.
We already know that Parkinson's disease is. There's evidence that Alzheimer's disease has a link to it. I mean, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, every time we turn around, they go, oh, there's an autoimmune component to this disease that we've always thought was this. And it keeps unveiling that when the gut goes wrong, it starts to cause lots of systemic damage in the body.
Yeah.
And when you think about the fact that 76% of Americans claim to have some sort of digestive problem, it's really scary. And so when I was in Arizona, when I was in Atlantic City this weekend, I got to talk to my cousin Rosemary, who it was her 75th birthday, and she actually took care of my sister Valerie for a period of time when Valerie became pretty crippled.
Wow.
And she said something that I didn't realize. She said to me, Valerie didn't eat much, but for a girl who didn't eat much, she had a huge stomach. I said, really? What do you mean? She goes, her stomach looked like she was pregnant. That's a distended gut. And this, and some of the information that we've been talking about on the show lately, as it relates to the small intestine, how the small intestine becomes seeded with gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria, microbes, fungi, and people are belching and they eat carbs and they get bloated. They eat this food. They're sensitive to this food. And it's because they're feeding these rogue actors that are living in their small intestine. And these rogue actors then literally poop toxins that get picked up into the bloodstream. And those toxins go out and destroy stuff inside your body. And so I have I'm willing to say, and maybe someone who's listening to this podcast, and I've been dead for 30 years already, that they're going to discover that ankylosing spondylitis has some autoimmune capacity. And that's why some people with the genetic predisposition get it and some people don't. Because it's about epigenetics. Everything that we're experiencing today, your genetics are not absolute. We know that. We know that there's women out there who have the BRCA gene, they don't get breast cancer. How do you explain that? If genetics is everything, then how would you explain that? You can't.
Right.
So when you have the genetics of something, it only matters when you come into contact or do the things, you come in contact in the environment or do the things that trigger it. Because the genetics don't guarantee the development. And the same is true of, I'm going to say this, and people are going to go, oh, great. But even if you don't have the genetics for something, that doesn't mean that you can't mutate and develop through autoimmunity that disease.
It makes a lot of sense because, I spoke before about how I have, the gene for various cancers. When I researched my family history, yes, there were people with cancer, but they worked really hard to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
They smoked 2 packs a day. They drank every day. They were exposed to various cancer. They worked in factories with cancer-causing chemicals. So, yeah, I'm completely on board with that. You might have the gene. What you do and how you live your life, we can bring that gene up to the forefront, and boom, next thing you know, you're sick with cancer.
Yeah, whether or not you're going to activate that gene is a different story.
Right.
And so I have autoimmune disorder that's from my gut, and I'm actually using a peptide that we're going to talk about next week on the show. I don't want to trumpet the news yet, but I'm actually using a peptide. So I have been unable to eat bread for the past few years. If I eat even a small amount of bread, I become so uncomfortably bloated so quickly.
I get stuffed up real bad.
Okay. So the innate and the learned immune system, Th1 and Th2, the innate immune system is what you're born with, and the learned immune system is what you're exposed to that you develop immunity to. And the latter is what vaccines are supposed to take advantage of, but it doesn't work because they both, Th1 and Th2, have to learn the immunity and develop it at the same time.
Right.
So you have to be exposed to things, get sick from them, and then get better from them in order for the innate immune system to update its information along with the learned immune system. So, with that being the case, I've been experimenting with a peptide, and I ate so much bread this weekend and I didn't get bloated. It's already starting to work. I've only been using it for a week. I'm going to have to use it for a few months. But this peptide could be the answer to people. There's actually research on this peptide in treating rheumatoid arthritis. It has pleiotropic effects. It will rid your body of all of the gram-negative, gram-positive pathogens. It will rid your body of rogue fungi. It will rid your body of anaerobes. It will rid your body of the wrong types of microbes that are causing problems.
Yeah.
It will rid your body. It literally can help reset your immune system. And it works through the Th1, through the innate immune system, not the learned immune system, Th2, which was what vaccines try to capitalize on. And on top of that, it has an antibiotic effect without being an antibiotic, which means that since it's acting on the Th1 immune system, you have no risk of developing antibiotic-resistant bacteria from its use. It's not an antibiotic, but it acts like one, which I predict a decade from now, after I talk about it next week, you're going to start hearing more about it as we move forward. They're going to start using this instead of antibiotics to treat pathogenic issues in the body. Because unlike antibiotics, which work on the Th2 immune system, these work on Th1. They actually will make the innate immune system kill the rogue bacteria. It's an amazing. This could be, of all the peptides that I've used, of all the peptides that I'm aware of, this actually could have the greatest impact on the population, because coming back around to what I said a second ago, and that is that 76% of Americans claim to have gut problem. And ironically, I bet you if you poll those same people, you'll find out that they are the ones that with rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's disease, ankylosing spondylitis, and all those other things. I'll guarantee it.
That's exciting stuff.
Yeah. So you'll hear about it first on Superhuman Radio next week. But I've been experimenting with it. This is the beginning of my second week, and I'm so impressed with just the early and what am I experiencing? Well, what we've discovered is that the gram-negative pathogens, they love starches. So chances are when I was eating bread and feeling bloated, it was because they were having a party. And they were just pooping and farting up a storm in my stomach, and because they're actually fermenting in my small intestine, they're fermenting the starches. And so that's pretty much gone now. I ate so much bread this weekend. I kept saying to Elisa, I can't believe I ate bread and I'm not belching and I'm not bloated.
That's wonderful. I'm excited for you.
Yeah. So, well, I'm trying to cure an autoimmune disorder that has ravaged my nervous system now, and it's really starting to cause me trouble.
Yeah.
And I don't want to become trapped in my body like my poor sister. And my poor sister would still be alive today had she not been misdiagnosed with Parkinson's disease and been treated for Parkinson's disease, which actually destroyed her brain. It's so sad. It's so sad now. I look back at, I didn't have the information I have today when my sister was alive. Otherwise, we would have tried something like this.
Right.
But she was misdiagnosed with Parkinson's disease early on. And once you get misdiagnosed, every single doctor treats you the same. Well, you have Parkinson's disease, so we'll try this drug because this is what they put her on Cinemet and Cinemet, which is carbidopa and levodopa, and that she had to keep increasing the dose every few months until it stopped working entirely. Well, why? Because she didn't have Parkinson's disease. And then they did a deep brain implant on her with the little electric box that she had to have sewn underneath her above her rib cage.
Jeez.
And they literally the medical orthodoxy shortened my sister's life. She may have ended up being incapacitated. But by treating her for Parkinson's disease when she didn't have Parkinson's disease, she couldn't swallow anymore. She couldn't talk anymore. They just burnt her little brain out.
That's awful.
I know. And I mean, that's why, if I go to a doctor and he says, oh, well, you've got MS or you've got, I'm like, you know what? Just get away from me.
Yeah.
Just stay away from me.
Yeah.
You don't have the answers and you don't have the cures, so just stay away from me.
And the sad thing is they probably think you're the one in denial.
Oh, yeah. But meanwhile, my sister was already crippled at 60.
Oh, man.
Right? And she died at 64. I'm faring pretty well right now. I mean, I have my challenges, but I can actually, and the other thing that is amazing to me is if I change the way I eat, my symptoms get worse. If I change the way I eat again, my symptoms get better. The fact that I can actually oscillate the symptoms through diet tells me that I can get better. But I'm still feeling my way around. I'm still feeling where the edges of the box are. Like, okay, I can't go too far that way. I can go this way. And now I'm on, now with this peptide, I am now on a quest over the next year or two to completely reverse all of my symptoms.
Very cool.
Once I get my stomach straightened out, I predict a lot of this will go away. And all of these symptoms I have, I can track back to when my stomach started becoming a problem for me.
Huh.
All of them. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we have the Blueprint Tip of the Day, and then after that, we have a little special segment that we're going to do after the Blueprint Tip of the Day. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Blueprint Power Hour. So, Coach, what is the Blueprint Tip of the Day?
Tip of the day has to do with static holds and the best movements to use them on. So we had a question earlier about all those different training methods that I recommend and use. I thought it was high time to visit or revisit static holds, since I've only really mentioned them in passing, right, when I answered listener questions. So as you're about to find out, they're among the best of the best methods to use especially for stubborn muscle groups. Now, they go by various names. I've seen them called X-reps, isometric holds, etc., but fundamentally they're the same. You hold a weight motionless, right, in the range of motion, usually the strongest part of the range of motion, for a particular exercise. The big advantage they convey is that you can use enormous weights, far greater than what you can lift concentrically, raise the weight. So in the spirit of upping your gains, these are the preferred exercises that I usually pair static holds with. First one, and probably the biggest one, top range rack pulls. And here you're going to load a very heavy weight onto a barbell that's set up in a power rack at about groin height. What you want to do is be able to dip your legs a little bit and break your knees to get your legs into the movement, and then pull the weight off the pins just an inch or so. Now, stand up with it and hold that motionless. Really feel it pulling down on your traps for around 5 to 10 seconds. You can feel your traps. They feel like they're tearing. But 2 of those such holds with at least 10 minutes of rest between each one. The last person I recommended these to in my gym stopped me about a month later, and he said, "Hey, I just want to thank you. I got a 50-pound carryover on his full-range deadlift." Now, not everybody's going to be so lucky, but I'll guarantee you after you try it, you will be hooked on what it can do for you. Next movement is static chin-ups, where you're going to use a dip or other belt. You want to hang a very heavy dumbbell from your waist. You jump up to a point with your chin above the bar and just hold yourself there for as long as you can, at least a good 5 count. Two such holds again, with at least 10 minutes between each hold. Your first set, I would recommend using an underhand, palms up, close grip, and then for the second one, a wider overhand grip. What you're going to find is usually a big disparity between the two, but working both really does a tremendous job building up not just your back, but your biceps. If you can build those up to holding 100 pounds, watch what it does for your full-range chin-ups and your lats, your biceps, and your abs. And yes, I said abs too, and you'll know what I mean after you try them. You have to statically contract the abs to stay up there. The next movement would be a standing or seated calf raise. You want to load that sucker up with as much weight as possible. Again, pressing off till you get to the very top inch of the range of motion. 2 such holds of at least 5 seconds. Again, 10 minutes in between. Calves are the epitome of stubborn muscles. At least they are in me. And in my opinion, they need an extreme stress in most cases to make them grow. And static holds, frankly, they've been the only weight room exercise that ever made much of a difference in my calves. And then finally, you've got dips with a static hold. There again, you're hanging a really heavy weight, as much as you can handle, from your waist, and you're performing 2 holds of around 5 seconds each. You want to break the elbows just a bit, where the tension comes off the joints and into the muscles. Dips and chins with static holds are 2 of the most productive exercises you can perform, and nothing that I have seen grows triceps as well as those 2. You pair those back to back, and if you don't see arm growth, nothing's going to grow your arms. So I would give those 5 exercises a try next time you train. You can perform them first in your workout. As your full range sets later on, the weight should feel like a feather compared to what you use on statics. They don't take much time, and the jumps from workout to workout have to be experienced to be believed. And I'm talking about the jump in weight. Static holds, 50-pound increases is the norm. So just imagine after, 10 sessions where you're going to be at. Remember, your muscle doesn't know range of motion. It knows tension. And tension, as I said before, is related to intensity, which again is by far the most important fundamental in your training. So, radically up the tension that your muscles are asked to contract against, and new muscle gains are all but assured. I'll leave you with this. For more information on the science of static holds, Pete Sisko's book, Static Contraction Training, and his various articles on his website, precisiontraining.com, is an excellent resource. He advocates it as a standalone training method. I don't know that I would go that far. Yes, I've tried it. My muscles were not as full. I was making big increases, but when you use it exclusively as your one training method, I think that's like using one golf club instead of a full set. So, but in many cases, for a lot of you, especially people with stubborn muscle groups, it's going to be just what the doctor ordered. Now, let's talk about neck training.
Yeah, so many of you may remember when Rob came on the show and talked about his right arm and right leg going numb one day at the gym.
Right.
Well, I experienced exactly the same thing as him last week at the gym, and it was clearly orthostatic hypotension. I had been sitting in the sauna the first time it happened for about 30 minutes, and when I stood up, I could feel this numbing like wash over my right leg and my foot, and then slowly my hand and my arm. I got out of the sauna, I sat down, and probably in real time, less than a minute, it kind of resolved and went back to normal.
Right.
It happened once again. I'm trying to think what I was doing. I had just done a very, very heavy movement, and then I stood up. Oh, I was doing heavy pulley pull downs.
Yep.
I was doing them underhanded, so I was just like 2 plates away from the entire stack. I think I was at 240 or 260 pounds, and I had really repped out. It was my last set, and I went to failure, and it pulled me. The weight pulled me out of the seat, so I stood right up. And when I stood up, all of a sudden I felt this sensation where my leg was getting numb again, and then it kind of went away. And I've been analyzing, what have I been doing differently all of a sudden that would precipitate something like this? And so I had a conversation with Rob today. Rob is a huge fan of neck training. I have become a huge fan of neck training. In fact, Rick Pack was in Louisville recently, and I had him train his neck as well. And I said to Rob, when did you train neck the last time this happened to you? He said, I think it was the day before. So what I've been doing is I've been doing very heavy neck extensions for a very long time. And the neck machine I use goes up to 220, and I generally do between 170 and 200 for at least 20 reps. But now I've started supersetting that with right and left flexor, but just at 80 pounds. And it dawned on me, this could be an impingement of the carotid artery. The neck muscles are getting bigger. They're pressing against the artery. Even a small amount of blood flow restriction to the brain will cause you to have wooziness. We know this. Rob pointed out during our conversation earlier, a triangle chokehold puts a guy to sleep. They basically pull your shoulders up, and your shoulders basically pinch off your carotid arteries, and they squeeze them together with their legs, and you pass out immediately because no blood, no oxygen to the brain, puts you to sleep. So I wanted to go on the record as telling you guys out there who are older especially, could there be a little plaque in there? I don't know. Now I'm going to go get scanned. I'm actually going to have a carotid artery ultrasound done on both sides to look at this.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to just go on the record of telling you guys out there, especially if you're older, that go slow with your neck training. And if you start to notice any tingling, wooziness, when you turn your head to the right, your ear rings, things like that, be aware that you could be putting some pressure on the carotid artery that could be gently restricting blood flow to the brain. And we would be remiss if we didn't say this for those of you out there, because I'd hate to hear something happen to somebody and it was because of their neck training. So.
Yeah, and you know what? When it does happen, it's scary.
Yeah. I thought, is this a stroke?
That's what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. Yep.
I immediately looked up TIA, a transient ischemic episodes, and I was reading about them, and this could be classified as a TIA. Well, a TIA, it turns out, is not a stroke, number one. Even though it could be a sign of a stroke in the future, by the way. But I found a good study that shows that a large number of people who have strokes and or TIAs suffer from orthostatic hypotension. What is orthostatic hypotension? Orthostatic hypotension to us is usually a symptom of overtraining, which I have. Remember, I just said I was overtraining, right?
Right. Yeah.
What happens is when you stand up, the adrenals squirt out chemicals to help the blood vessels constrict so that blood pressure stays the same as your body goes from a seated position to an erect position. Otherwise, gravity pulls blood down and not enough blood gets to the brain. So orthostatic hypotension is, as it says, as you change your position, blood pressure drops. Doesn't go up, it goes down. Strokes and TIAs have always been associated with high blood pressure. Well, I found a good study with over 4,000 subjects that shows that the large majority of people who had TIAs actually also had complained in the past and been treated for orthostatic hypertension. So a TIA may not be a plaque or a blockage in a blood vessel in the brain, which leads to a stroke. It could be the result of blood not getting to the brain fast enough because your blood pressure dropped when you stood up. And
right.
these people complain about this. I stood up, I get woozy. That's orthostatic hypotension. That could also precipitate the symptoms of what is a TIA. And so ischemia just means not enough oxygen is getting to something, right? Cardiac ischemia, an ischemic event in the heart is called a heart attack. Not enough oxygen is getting to the heart and it can't function. Well, there's lots of reasons why oxygen doesn't get to your brain. One can be a stenosis, a plaque buildup, a narrowing of the other one could be the heart isn't keeping blood pressure high enough. And the blood's dropping out of the brain. So again, oxygen is not being delivered.
Very interesting stuff. The way you're describing it, it's the best plausible explanation, I think, for what happened to me. Now, I was so spooked. I said to the woman I was training, I said, "I'm sorry, but I have to go." I went right to the ER. They did an EKG, and they ruled out a TIA or a stroke, and they were at a loss to explain it. I think what you laid out here is a very logical example of what can happen, especially as you get up into heavier weights, and now your neck is, I put almost 3 inches on my neck and started, training it directly.
Do you do cardio?
Oh, yes, every day.
Okay.
Almost every day.
And cardio is an important factor in reversing orthostatic hypotension, believe it or not.
Huh.
So a lot of us like to lift, but we don't like to do cardio, and that's a really, and I'm one of those assholes, by the way. So I'm not talking down to you. I'm actually talking for myself. I'm actually moving forward. I'm going to take the next couple of days off because of the traveling and the partying, and because I was overtrained to begin with.
Yep.
I'm going to take the next couple of days off, and when I go back, I am going to split my hour at the gym in half. And half of it's going to be cardio, and half of it's going to be my new whole body 2-set routine. Because I can get that done in 30 minutes if I want to. And then I'll do cardio because I need to up my cardio. I don't do enough cardio, and that's not good for my heart because my heart is being built to be strong in one direction, not the other direction, and that's not good. That could be why I have orthostatic hypertension.
What do you weigh?
I'm about 230 right now.
Okay, so, your body has 230 pounds of tissue. Your heart has 230 pounds of tissue to circulate blood to. But I know exactly what you're saying. I do cardio, but I will also tell you I absolutely hate every minute of it. But as I tell my son, who I'm trying to explain to him, part of being an adult is doing things you know you should do, but you really dislike. But you do them because you know you need to. So. Well,
and on that note, I have to give up coffee once and for all. I did have a cup of coffee today because I was just kind of tired. But I texted Dr. John Parker last week, and I said, I'm giving up caffeine, and then in big capital letters, again. I'm sitting here looking at an unopened pack of 357 Super Magnum caffeine pills.
Oh, wow.
What I was doing was each one of these is 200 milligrams of caffeine, but a bunch of other stuff too. And I was taking 1 to 2 of those a day. Again, this is just recently after, everybody on the show is going, Carl, but you just kicked caffeine. I did. But I started drinking iced Cafe Americanos, which is 4 shots of espresso and cold water and ice cubes and a little half and half and stevia, because I can drink those really fast. Like I can drink one of those in literally under a minute instead of sipping on coffee, and I get hit with all the caffeine from all 4 shots that fast. And that stopped working. So then I started taking one of these 357 Super Magnum, more pep, quicker energy, stimulant pills that you buy at like 7-Eleven and stuff like that. Yep. And so then I got to the point where I was having a cup of coffee at home, training, then having a large Cafe Americano iced and one of these pills, and then sometimes another pill later on in the afternoon. And so I'm really back to where I was before with like close to 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day, and I don't feel good. And I can't keep doing this. I can't keep getting off of it and then going, I feel good, I'll start taking it again. It's going to cause me problems. So this time I'm really done. I had a cup of coffee this morning knowing that that's it. There's no more coffee for me. And plus, coffee really messes up my gut. If I'm trying to fix my gut and I'm continuing to drink coffee, if I drink coffee on an empty stomach, my nose gets stuffed up immediately. I start coughing. I get a tickle in my throat. So that means I'm allergic to something in it.
Yeah. And a lot of people get kind of pulled into the same position you are. Before you know it, you're taking almost a gram of caffeine a day. It goes back, again, to those pre-workouts. When caffeine is your primary driver, your primary stimulant, you know you are in trouble. My pre-workout, as an example, is going to have a completely different driver. It's going to have a little bit of caffeine, just enough to potentiate that. But when you're relying on caffeine as your primary driver in whatever stimulant you're using or pre-workout, you're in trouble. That's all I'll say. You're in trouble if you're relying on caffeine as the big gun.
Well, and let's not forget that Adele Musa did a blog post a few years ago that said that guys who depend on caffeine to get them through their workouts are almost always overtrained.
Yes.
Because that's why you need the caffeine, because you're overtrained, because you really need to just take the frig off. But no, you're going to pound down, 300 milligrams of caffeine anhydrous and go in there and crush it.
Yep.
But what you're really doing is just perpetuating overtraining, and then all sorts of problems happen when you're overtrained. Injuries, regression, inability to lose body fat. Don't misunderstand that when the body feels that kind of stress, it gets panicked. It just holds on to body fat.
Yep.
So, no, I this is it for me. This is going to be, and it won't take me long. I kick caffeine pretty quickly. In a couple of weeks, I'll be actually feeling better. And you know what the funny thing is?
What?
The last time I kicked caffeine, I was going to the gym, and I actually felt stronger, and I was able to train longer.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, and then here I am again, I'm going to kick caffeine again.
Yeah.
And it's not doing anything good for my gut, and it's not doing anything good for my heart, and it's not doing anything good for anything.
Unfortunately, it's everywhere. Even if you step outside of sports nutrition, how many people use coffee to wake up?
Yeah.
A lot.
Everybody in America. 76% of America. Oh, wait. 76% of Americans have gut problems. What if there's a link? Anyway. All right. Well, look, that's it for today. Go check out CoachRobRegish.com. All right, Rob.
Thank you much.
Talk to you later, brother. We'll see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thanks for listening today.